Hey Nancy Drew fans, we're back with Book 9, The Sign of the Twisted Candles. Published in 1933 and revised in 1968, this is the second of three stories that were authored by Walter Carrig. Harriet and Edna are pretty unhappy with Walter, in particular because he cannot keep his mouth shut about his status as an author for the Syndicate, and a couple of times he has said that he's the author of Nancy Drew, despite the fact that he's contractually obligated not to say that. This story begins with Nancy, George, and Bess caught in a thunderstorm on their way to investigate a mystery at an inn called The Sign of the Twisted Candles. George and Bess's great-uncle, Asa Sidney, is supposedly being kept prisoner in the tower there. Upon arriving at the inn, they meet the young Carol Whipple, who is a 15-year-old foster child who lives at the inn with her parents, Mr. and Mrs. Jemmett. Mr. and Mrs. Jemmett are total crooks, and Carol is virtually their slave, and she lives in fear of them. This introduces a new theme, as this is the second time where Nancy befriends a foster child. At one point, Carol goes to live with the Drew family. The Jemmetts have pretty much the opposite reaction to Nancy. They spend most of the book trying to get her permanently out of the picture. Nancy shares their distaste so much that she comes to physical blows with Mrs. Jemmett not once but twice. First, Mrs. Jemmett is trying to block the way from Nancy and her father going up to help Asa Sidney. With the speed of a panther, Nancy grabbed Mrs. Jemmett's arms and swung her around out of the way. Mrs. Jemmett's eyes blazed. "Who are you to come interfering with a mother correcting a wayward child? The nerve of you! Why, you're only a youngster yourself." "You certainly are proving yourself unfit to take a mother's place," Nancy replied evenly. Choking with rage, Mrs. Jemmett lashed out at Nancy, striking her on the arm with the brush. She raised her hand again to repeat the blow, but Nancy deftly caught the woman's wrist and wrenched the hairbrush from her. Carson Drew, attorney-at-law, is featured in this story, and he serves as the perfect counterpoint to the terrible parenting of the Jemmetts. He lavishes praise on Nancy, he trusts her implicitly, and he's always there to help her out of a jam, including when Mr. Jemmett has just pushed Nancy out of a window. We're back on a kick with flashlights in this book, including a regular flashlight that Nancy uses to investigate the grounds at the inn, and also a portable spotlight that she keeps in the trunk of her car. I think this is what it would look like. And there are more signs of the privileged world that Nancy lives in. The Drew home has air conditioning. The banker that Mr. Drew pulls in to help with the case has a chauffeured car. And also, when Nancy saves Carol from the Jemmetts, she takes her on a huge shopping spree. There's plenty of good-sounding food in this book, including this meal that Nancy orders at the inn. We'll have jellied consomme, sliced breast of chicken, hearts of lettuce with Roquefort dressing, nut bread, ice cream, chocolate layer cake, and fruit punch. Later in the book, Carol makes a butterfly pie for the Drew family. Into each portion of the lemon chiffon pie, Carol had stuck 2 large wafers, which she had fashioned into the shape of butterfly wings. Carol had decorated them in various patterns with vegetable colorings. My favorite random action moment so far, when Nancy, her father, and a local police officer go into the Jemmett's cabin without a warrant, and Nancy starts going through boxes. Nancy knelt on one knee, pulled off the lid, then shrieked in terror. The box contained a large copper-colored snake. Disturbed, it reared and the head darted toward Nancy, fangs out. Part of this story is about a family feud, and there are several chapters where George and Bess aren't speaking to Nancy. Nancy works better with a couple of sidekicks, so luckily that's resolved, and it turns out that Carol is related to the cousins, so I suspect we might see her in upcoming mysteries as well. Next up, Password to Larkspur Lane.